So today you're going to be looking at how to graph a line that's given to you in slope-intercept form. Now, the thing to remember when you're looking at slope-intercept form, that's y equals mx plus b. They can rearrange it to y equals b plus mx just to try to fool you, but what you're looking for is if it's in a y equals form, the constant that is there, whether they write the constant first or the constant second, is the y-intercept of the line, which is the starting value. The m, which is the coefficient of the x term, is the slope. So it doesn't matter whether they put the x term after the constant or the x term before the constant. I'm going to look for the constant, that's my y-intercept, and then I'm going to look for the coefficient of x, and that's my slope, or my rate of change. So my starting value is the constant, which in this case is a -3. My rate of change is my slope. That's the coefficient of the x, so it's -2/3. Now I can think of that as -2 over +3, or if I wanted to, I could write that as +2 over -3. The thing to notice, though, one or the other has to be negative. I cannot think of this as -2 over -3, because a negative divided by a negative would be a positive. I should already know before I even start to graph this that if the rate of change is negative, this line should fall as it goes across the graph from left to right. So before I put my axes on my graph, I need to think of where to put them. I know I need to go to -3, and if I use this as my slope, I need to go down 2 more before I go to the right 3. So I'm going to need to make sure I can get all the way over to +5 when I'm doing this. Now, I have to do mine this way. If I need to get down to -5, I need to draw my x-axis up high enough on this graph, and let me delete that one because I really don't want it to be a white line that you can't see. So we're going to go back and change this to a black line. So I need to put my x-axis so that I make sure I can get down to -5. Now, make sure you're putting the arrows at both ends because this is a line and it does matter. And then I'm going to run to the right 3, so I need to make sure I have enough room over here to get to +3. So my y-axis, again, arrows at both ends. Now, for my scale, since you need to get all the way down to -3 first, fill in, this is -1, -2, -3. These scale numbers are directly on the grid line. Do not put them between 2 grid lines because then it gets confusing which one is which. So my first point in this graph is going to be at -3 on the y-axis. That's my starting value, which is also my y-intercept. Now from there, I'm going to go down 2 more, there's a -2 for a rise, over to +3 for my run. Now because I did that, I need to label my scale down that far too. So I'm going to have to go down to -5 and over to +3 on the x's. And at this point, I need to draw a line through those two. Now on this, frankly, it's going to be a little bit challenging. If you can, draw the line so that it extends through the majority, at least, of your graph. I'm going to have to futz with this one a little bit just to drag it where I want it to be. So that's my line, arrows at both ends. And do not put the arrows directly on top of the 2 points you plotted. Extend the line out past those 2 points and put your arrows at the ends. Now for the second one, my starting value is the constant, which in this case is +8. The rate of change is +5. Now, I'm going to have a problem here. I only have 10 grids, 10 squares on my graph. If I think of a rate of change, this rate of change is 5, which is like 5 over 1. Well, if I start at +8 and I want to go up 5 more, I can't fit this on the graph. And if it's possible to go by ones on your graph, you need to do that. But the way I get a positive is not just from a positive divided by another positive. I can also think of this as -5 divided by -1. that's also equal to a positive 5. That I can fit on this graph. So first I'm going to go and draw my grid lines in. Now I need to get up to positive 8 on my graph, so I'm going to put my x-axis down far enough to get me to positive 8, and actually I'm going to move that down one more. Because if there are 10 here, if I move it up here, 8's going to be at the very top. And if I can avoid putting a point right on the edge, I will. Sometimes I can't. And then I need to go over 1, either in the positive or in this case negative direction. So I can actually put my y-axis pretty much in the middle, and I have enough room. Since I need to get up to positive 8, I'm going to put my scale in, again, marking directly on the grid lines all the way up to positive 8. It's going to take me just a second to get there. My starting value on my graph is at positive 8. Now with a positive slope, this line should rise as it goes from left to right. But I don't have enough room to go up 5, because I'd be off the graph, and over 1 to the right. So instead, this is going to have me go down 5. So I'm at 8. When I go down 5, I'm going to be at 3. But I'd also, with a negative 1 for the run, I have to go in the negative direction 1 for my run. When I draw my line in for that one, it is going to be a positive slope, even though I went down as I was getting it. So there's my line. Again, it's difficult to do this correctly. I really need to rotate this line. It's not going through those 2 points quite the way I want it to. And unfortunately, I cannot at this moment figure out how to rotate this. So it should go directly through there and directly through here. Much easier to do with your straight edge. Now the last thing I forgot almost to put on this, I don't have anything on my x-axis down here. I went over to negative 1, so I need to label that negative 1. This one looks weird because there's no x in there. My starting value is the constant, which is positive 2, so that's okay. But I don't see an x to be able to find the coefficient. This is the same thing as the y equals 0 times x, which is just 0, and then add 2. So my rate of change is really 0. If I think of that as a fraction so I can see a rise over run, it's 0 over 1. So I need to get up to positive 2 on my y-axis. I'm not going to rise anymore at all, and I'm going to run 1 to the right. So I'm going to put my axes in. Since I only need to get to positive 2, I can pretty much center my x-axis if I want to. Don't forget the arrows at both ends. And I only need to get up to positive 2, so if I want to, I can pretty much center my y-axis as well. Don't forget the arrows at the ends. So I need to start at positive 2 on the y-axis and put my starting point, my y-intercept. I rise 0, so I don't go up or down at all. Run 1 in the positive direction for my second point. Now since I went over there, I need to actually put that 1 on my x-axis as well. So my line just needs to go through those 2 points, which means it's just a nice horizontal line through where y is 2. And the last thing you're going to see sometimes, you have this x with the coefficient, but there's no constant at the end. Well, no constant at the end is pretty much like saying I could just add a constant of 0 at the end. Y equals 1/4 x is the same thing as y equals 1/4 x plus 0. So my starting value is my constant, which is 0. That's my y-intercept. My rate of change is a positive 1/4, or I could write it as a negative 1 over negative 4 if it helped me to fit this on the graph more easily. Since my starting value is 0 and I only need to go up 1, I can center my x-axis if I want to. Don't forget the arrows at the ends. I'm only going up 1, but I have to go to the right 4, so I'm going to put my y-axis over here a little bit to the left. Don't forget the arrows at the ends. So I'm starting at 0 for my starting value for my y-intercept. That's just at the origin here. And then I'm going to rise 1 in the positive direction. Rise is up or down. And then run 4 in the positive direction, which is going to put me here. I need to put the scale in. I went up to 1, and then I need, oops, it should be a 1. Let me erase that for just a second, otherwise it's going to look really bad. So my x values, I need to label over this bar, which is to 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm just going to freehand draw a line through here. It's not going to be as straight as with a straight edge, but put your ruler down and then you draw your line through those 2 points. I would expect when you're doing these things on your graphing grids to see the following things. I expect to see straight lines for both your axes and the line itself, which means you need to use a ruler or a quality straight edge. I need to see arrows at the ends of all of your lines. That's in your axes and the line you're graphing. And then the 2 points that you used to actually plot this, I need your scale on your x and y axes to go out to cover those points. If it is possible to go by ones and fit your graphs in, you need to do that. And on the homework, it's possible to do that in this section. So, thank you very much.